From soldier to Shahada, the unlikely spiritual journey of Lourdes Loyola. In a world increasingly shaped by cultural misunderstanding, polarization, and rapid-fire assumptions, stories like that of Lourdes Loyola offer a rare and deeply human perspective on transformation, faith, and the power of lived experience. A U.S. Army veteran and former practicing Catholic, Loyola's path to Islam is not just a tale of religious conversion. It's a portrait of self-discovery shaped by war, politics, compassion, and conviction.
I have a brother in the military.
And you sound like you should.
A military life begins. Lourdes Loyola joined the military in 2009, stepping into a world defined by uniformity, discipline, and structure. Deployed twice to Afghanistan, she experienced firsthand the complexities of serving in a Muslim-majority country, experiences that would plant the first seeds of a journey she didn't even know she was on. In Afghanistan, Lourdes encountered Muslims not as abstract others, but as everyday people, warm, generous, and striving, just like anyone else. She said they were just absolutely normal people, trying to make a living just like us. Though she wasn't yet interested in Islam, these encounters chipped away at the dominant media narratives that painted Muslims as dangerous or foreign. At the time, she didn't dig deeper, but the encounters lingered, quietly challenging the prejudices that so often go unquestioned in American public discourse. The 2015 turning point, faith through defense. Years later, in 2015, a different kind of battlefront emerged. As political rhetoric during the U.S. presidential election cycle grew increasingly hostile toward Muslims, Loyola felt a fire awaken, not for religion, but for justice. Her own brother was Muslim, and she found herself increasingly unsettled by the casual bigotry online. "I'm the type of person that likes to stand up for people," she says. So when the elections happened, and I started seeing a lot of people talking bad about Muslims, I was like, nobody's going to talk bad about my brother's religion. But true to her nature, Lourdes didn't want to argue without substance. She began researching Islam, not with the intent of converting, but to understand, to fact-check, and to counter prejudice with truth. Her intellectual curiosity soon evolved into something deeper. She picked up the Quran. She began attending mosque open houses. Slowly, the spark of inquiry became a quiet but insistent pull.
But another thing about me is that I like to come.
The mosque visit that changed everything. At one open house in Nebraska, Lourdes came prepared with tough questions. She laughed, remembering how she demanded answers about inheritance rights, women's status, and associations with terrorism. Far from feeling judged or silenced, she found openness, calm, and genuine dialogue. Still, one moment nearly pushed her away. When she asked why Muslims don't eat pork, the presenter answered simply, "Because God said so." For someone raised Catholic, that answer triggered old frustrations, memories of being told to just have faith when she asked difficult questions as a young girl. Disappointed but not deterred, she was ready to leave, content that she had learned enough to defend Islam publicly. Then, a sister approached her quietly and gave her a more detailed, thoughtful explanation. That brief exchange moved her. She took that as a sign. God really knew what my struggles were in the Catholic Church.
I don't think he did it for me to condone it, right? He didn't do what
The
he
moment
did for any of
of
us to condone it.
Shahada.
I think what he was looking for
Something
was that
shifted.
shock
As she
factor,
lingered in
right?
the
He's not the
mosque,
first person
a
to burn
brother
himself alive.
approached and asked a simple but profound question. What are you waiting for? And just like that, Lourdes Loyola became a Muslim, reciting the Shahada, the Islamic declaration of faith, on December 10th, 2015. She had found home. I felt like
Yeah,
I was
so
where I always meant
let's
to
say
be, she
there's a
says.
unit-
There's nothing in the Quran that I doubt. There's nothing that makes me feel oppressed.
An army unit going to Gaza right now, right?
Wearing the
Would
hijab,
you-
a personal
and I'm
decision.
speaking to you, right? Not a
Loyola's
person, like,
transition wasn't abrupt
feel
or
better knowing
externally
that
pressured.
that
She
unit-
allowed herself time. She didn't begin wearing the hijab full-time until June 2018, nearly 3 years after converting. I didn't let anybody force me into anything. I just took little steps at my own pace. The hijab journey, like her faith, was a deeply personal evolution. At first, she wore it occasionally, at the gym, around town, or during prayer. Over time, she moved toward full-time observance, encouraged gently
Once again,
by her
obviously, I can
supportive
only
husband,
speak
who
based
was
off of
not yet
experience,
Muslim
right? I
himself.
think that
If you're
the
always
longer you
going
stay
to
in the
wait on
military,
everybody else's approval, you're never going to do what you feel in your heart, he told her.
I had already met Muslims at that time that were from
An interfaith marriage and patience. Her husband's
Wanting,
support for her
right?
conversion and practice was
to be a second or
unwavering.
third wife, like,
Even
we
though
need to
he was
also
not Muslim at the
remind
time,
men
he
that
respected
there
her
are-
choices, took their sons to the mosque, and even stood guard when she prayed in public. For Lourdes, this was enough. I had already made up in my mind that my husband was never going to convert, but I was okay with that. Islam didn't come to break up families. She did struggle at times with the Islamic injunction that Muslim women shouldn't marry non-Muslim men. But she sought guidance from scholars and imams, and no one ever advised her to divorce her supportive husband. It didn't make sense that a
Single
merciful
mothers,
God would want me
that's
to
what
do
we
that,
should go with.
she
I think
reflected.
we're not deserving to just be the only wife. I think that that's a
The unexpected conversion of her husband. Then something remarkable happened. Years after Loyola became Muslim, her husband surprised the entire family. One Friday, seemingly out of the blue, he suggested they all go to the mosque. The khutbah, the sermon that day, spoke about the importance of baby steps in Islam and how it's better to be a struggling believer than to walk away from faith altogether. After the sermon, he turned to Lourdes and said, "I want to be Muslim." She was in shock, she remembers. "I never thought it would happen." They returned to the imam and he took his Shahada right there in front of their children. She describes it as one of the most beautiful and emotional moments of her life.
to take my hijab off. I'm being oppressed by like we're not that. I'm in the military. You do podcasts. Like we're literally just regular schmegular people. And that's all. But I do see now the importance of
Raising Muslim
having a
children
practicing
with autonomy.
Muslim.
Lourdes and her husband now raise their 3 sons in Islam, but not through coercion. Their eldest son converted after attending Sunday school and making the decision on his own. "We let him choose," she says. "I don't want you to be Muslim because your parents are. I want you to be Muslim because you love the religion." Even now, she tells her children that if they ever decide not to be Muslim, it must be because they studied and truly understood what led them to that conclusion, not because they were following anyone blindly.
Talk to him through his feelings, through what he's going through.
Life after conversion, a quiet resilience. For Lourdes Loyola, conversion was not a finish line. It was the beginning of a new kind of discipline, one not enforced by military superiors, but cultivated internally through faith, community, and personal accountability. Islam brought her peace, yes, but it also brought challenge. Navigating life as a Latina Muslim woman, a veteran, a mother, and a former Catholic demanded more than a change in rituals. It demanded a reimagining of her identity. In many ways, her military background prepared her for this. The army had taught her how to operate under pressure, how to commit, how to live with integrity. Islam, though vastly different in form and function, also demanded discipline and submission, not to authority, but to God. What set Lourdes apart was the deliberate nature of her journey. She didn't stumble into religion. She studied it, questioned it, and ultimately chose it, all while maintaining clarity about her reasons and boundaries. In her own words, she didn't convert out of emotion. She converted because everything finally made sense.
Single Muslim women or single mothers who are Muslim who aren't married in
the social media factor and its absence. One of the most poignant parts of Lourdes's reflection is her gratitude for not having been heavily influenced by social media during her early years as a Muslim. She describes her journey as one largely free from online noise and pressure. No performative displays, no debates over what kind of hijab is acceptable, no anxiety about being the perfect Muslim woman. I thank God that I wasn't present on social media, she says. I didn't let anybody pressure me into anything. Today, social media can amplify judgment, turning personal exploration into public performance. But Lourdes's quiet conversion, free from online spectacle, gave her the space to grow organically. This kind of solitude, especially in the digital age, is rare, and it became one of the reasons she found peace in her new faith. Community without conformity. What makes her story particularly resonant is how Lourdes managed to integrate into the Muslim community without losing herself in it. She didn't adopt an Arabized identity. She didn't change her name or attempt to erase her Mexican-American heritage. She remained Lourdes, still deeply connected to her culture, her language, and her family history. In this, she breaks the mold of the typical conversion narrative that sometimes expects new Muslims to shed their cultural identity in favor of a monolithic Islamic one. Her Islam isn't an erasure of her past. It's an extension of her values: justice, compassion, clarity, and integrity.
I was raised in the Catholic Church, and I went to church because I wanted to go to church.
Navigating norms and breaking stereotypes. Another layer of Lourdes's story is how she defied stereotypes on multiple fronts. A Latina woman in the U.S. Army who deployed to Afghanistan, breaking expectations of both gender and ethnicity. A soldier who found her faith in a religion often misunderstood in military and conservative circles. A Muslim woman whose husband was not initially Muslim, yet who built a spiritually rooted family without community pressure to conform. A hijabi who chose the headscarf on her own terms after years of gradual practice. Her life embodies paradoxes that challenge mainstream narratives. And in embracing those contradictions, she has become an example of what real transformation can look like: messy, layered, and wholly authentic.
Enter a church, or we are a very modest culture, and once again we're portrayed as
Faith,
like, typically Mexican,
family,
you know, the
and the
sexy
long
Mexican,
view.
right? Like the spicy
Now,
Latina,
Lourdes and her
we fall into
husband
this,
raised
like,
3
trope
children
of
in
just
a Muslim household,
over-sexualization, right?
2 of
But
whom
we're
chose
not.
Islam for themselves, and a 3rd who is being raised as a born Muslim. But even this she approaches with nuance. She continues to stress autonomy and education over blind acceptance. Her children are encouraged to explore, question, and understand their faith. This parental philosophy is especially powerful in a time when many young people feel pressured by cultural or religious expectations. By modeling spiritual freedom and responsibility, Lourdes is not just raising Muslims, she's raising thinkers. From Afghanistan to faith, a full circle. There is a beautiful symmetry in her story. The seeds of Islam were first planted in a war zone, during missions meant to stabilize a Muslim country. Years later, those seeds would grow into a faith that stabilized her own life, bringing peace, clarity, and a profound sense of belonging. Her initial view of Islam was shaped by human contact, not doctrine. Afghan civilians, kind, ordinary people, became the first ambassadors of her eventual faith. And in some ways, that's what her story underscores, that human connection can break through the fog of political rhetoric and media distortion. A story for our time. Lourdes Loyola's journey defies simplification. It's not just a conversion story, it's a reflection of modern complexity. It touches on post-9/11 geopolitics and the transformation of Muslim identity in America. Gender and faith, as a woman navigates patriarchal systems both in and outside religious institutions. Latinx representation in Islam, offering a rare but growing voice in a faith too often viewed through a narrow cultural lens. Interfaith family dynamics, and how faith doesn't have to divide, it can evolve together. She's not trying to be a spokesperson. She's just telling her story, but in doing so, she becomes a voice for many, veterans wrestling with purpose, women reclaiming agency in religious spaces, families embracing difference, and converts finding peace not in perfection, but in progress.
At the end of the day, he chose to do what he did. He felt strongly about that. And while of course,
The quiet
as a
strength
Muslim, as
of a
military
spiritual
person, I don't
warrior.
condone that. But like I
Lourdes
said
Loyola
before,
is in many ways still a soldier, but the battlefield has changed. Where she once marched through the harsh terrain of Afghanistan in uniform, she now walks through life in hijab, both symbols of identity, both commitments made with full awareness of the cost. Her battle today is not with insurgents or foreign powers, it's with assumptions, stereotypes, societal pressure, and the inner struggle for sincerity, the jihad and nafs, struggle of the self, that many Muslims consider the greatest battle of all. Yet, unlike many public figures or viral conversion stories, Lourdes doesn't seek applause. Her strength is not performative. It lies in her measured tone, her critical thinking, her refusal to trade
talking about
authenticity
Aaron Bush
for
now,
approval. from either the
He knew
Muslim
what he was
community
doing, right?
or wider
He
American
did that both
society.
against
She is not a
military,
convert trying to
but
become someone
obviously
else.
at the
She is simply a woman who chose Islam with her whole self, mind, heart, and history. Faith beyond legalism. A particularly striking part of Lourdes' story is her nuanced understanding of Islamic law, especially when it came to her marriage. When asked about the rule that a Muslim woman cannot remain married to a non-Muslim man, she did not react with defiance or fear. Instead, she turned to study and sincere consultation. She asked scholars, she reflected, she applied her conscience, her knowledge of God's mercy, and her common
I don't think
sense.
he did it for me to condone
She said,
right? He
it didn't
do
make sense that a
what he did for
merciful
any of us to
religion
condone
would
it. I
break
think
up
what
a
he was
supportive
looking for was
family.
that shock factor,
Some may
right?
disagree
He's not
with
the
her
first person to
stance,
burn himself
but what
alive.
stands out is that she didn't make this decision in isolation. She sought guidance and made a decision grounded in her lived reality. And over time, that decision bore fruit. Her husband eventually became Muslim, on his own terms, at his own pace. There's a lesson here in tawakkul,
Yeah, so
trust in God,
let's
and
say
about trusting
there's a
in the
unit-
process of hearts being guided, not by force, but by love and truth.
An army unit going to Gaza right now, right? Would you, and I'm speaking to you right now,
Lessons in parenting, raising
feel
faithful
better knowing
thinkers.
that
In a
unit-
world where religious upbringing can become authoritarian, Lourdes takes a different approach. She encourages her children to study Islam, not just inherit it. She wants them to love Islam, not perform it out of guilt or fear. Her oldest son took his Shahada at 9 years old, not because it was expected, but because he felt ready. Even now, she tells him and his siblings, if you ever leave Islam, let it be because you studied it and found it false, not because of how people treat you.
based off my experience,
This
right?
philosophy
I think
is
that
rare, especially in
as long as you stay in the
cultures where
military-
religious identity is enforced early. But Lourdes understands the stakes. She wants her children to have what she had, agency in choosing their spiritual path. In this way, her home is not just raising Muslims, it's raising conscious believers, people who are not just in the faith, but committed to
be a
it.
second or third wife, like we need to also remind men that there are.
The power of example. What ultimately brought her husband to Islam? Not lectures, not ultimatums, not community pressure. It was her example. It was her calm, her constancy, her inner peace. It was the slow, steady presence of Islam in their home, not as a threat or division, but as a source of growth and grounding. It was watching their sons grow into confident, joyful young Muslims. It was seeing how the religion that once seemed foreign had transformed the woman he loved into a more grounded, whole version of herself. And one day, it all clicked. At a Friday sermon, while listening to an imam emphasize compassion and the importance of building strong foundations rather than expecting perfection, something shifted. He turned to his wife and simply said, "I want to be Muslim."
So I've had anti-terrorism training turn very anti-Islamic, and I put a stop to that. And I've spoken up and said, hey, like we need to revisit.
A family reunited in faith. When Lourdes first took her Shahada in 2015, she never expected her husband to follow. She had made peace with raising her children in an interfaith home. She was grateful for his support and never pressured him. But 5 years later, standing side by side with their sons, he recited the same words she once had. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadur Rasulallah. The family, once religiously divided, was now united, not just in love, but in belief. Their third child would be born into Islam. Their sons would have two parents modeling faith. And Lourdes, once the only Muslim in her entire family, now found herself surrounded by believers, not born into it, but choosing it, just like she had.
So I need to make sure that he has somebody that's unbiased, right? That can talk to him through his feelings, through what he's going through.
Conclusion: the strength of a soft revolution. Lourdes Loyola's story is not loud. It doesn't make headlines or trend on social media. It is quiet, deliberate, and deeply human, and that is what makes it revolutionary. It's a story of one woman, shaped by war, grounded in faith, who took the long road home. It's about how clarity outlasts confusion, how sincerity outshines spectacle, and how hearts, when given room to grow, will often find their way to truth. Hers is not a tale of instant transformation. It is a patient evolution, a spiritual unfolding. From Catholicism to combat, from questions to conviction, from solo prayers to a house filled with faith, Lourdes has journeyed through the full spectrum of identity, love, and belief. And in doing so, she has become more than a convert. She has become a compass, pointing others toward a version of Islam that is not dogmatic, but deeply personal, not rigid, but rooted, not fearful, but free. She reminds us that Islam is not a culture to adopt or a club to join. It's a truth to discover. And when you do, it feels like home.